So 2 Corinthians 12, 7 through 10 is Paul again, as we've listened week after week with him saying, to keep me from becoming conceited because of these surpassingly great revelations that was given me, a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses and insults and hardships and persecutions and difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. So following this next question that I'm going to ask you, I'd like to revisit this a bit personally and pose the question, what is it that you personally need in order for you to be contented to the point of being close to a regular condition of content and delight? What is it that you need in order for you to be in a condition of perpetual or constant delight, if not contentment? That's where we're going to go. But the first question that I'm going to pose is Jesus encounters. What's happened during your week that you'd like to share? Successes, hit it on the heads, near misses, or complete catastrophes. So that impending question, what's it take? What's it take for you to be contented? What's it take for you to be delighted so that you can boast in your weaknesses, your insecurities, your insults, your hardships? What's it take? You personally. You're such good church people. Look at that. You're just contemplating that question and you've already internalized it, and whoo, you're so content. You're content with Jesus. Yeah, I'm sorry. My signing doesn't allow myself to. I'm sorry, Gene. I'm not connecting with you, but thank you. No. No.
Because I'd like to participate. It's difficult for everybody.
So if you're not answering right now, you're I guess I'm to take from that you're already content, you're already delighted with Jesus to the point where hardships, transgressions against you, weaknesses, you're perfectly fine going, I'm resting in Jesus. He's got that. I got no problems.
I don't think it's always that, Preston. I think it's that we don't know how to answer that question right now.
Thank you.
I'm
Appreciate that.
because I'm thinking about it, but I don't even know how to answer that. So I don't think that it's necessarily what you were saying, but I don't know if we can know how to necessarily express it. And
Yep.
Yeah, I'm kind of where she's at, and I consider myself a pretty content individual for the most part. I just don't know that that's ever going to be possible in this life to be totally okay, Lord. I'm okay with everything you throw my way. I just don't know. We're always going to have worries and doubts, so. I am content in the fact that he's with me through whatever I go through, but still don't always understand it.
Sarah, one of the always exciting contributions that you make is that you will thought bubble those things that a lot of us are afraid to say. And I think that is a very fair response to say, I don't know how to answer that question. I will tell you that I think that it's such a fair response. We never answer the question. In fact, we neglect thinking about the question.
Right. And so when you ask that question, right, and then you're thinking to yourself, what would it take? And I I don't know. It's just an odd thing to try to figure out how to put into words, but I think it's an ongoing process as well. Because, your situation may change from day to day, week to week, month to month, whatever it is, and you may be content here, but then there's something else that you're like, yeah, now what do I do? Right? How do I react to it? How can I be content? How can I have that joy no matter what the circumstance?
Yeah, and the discussion now that you're helping us to ramp up on is, again, that distinction between happiness and joy. And I think that contentment, even though we've kind of talked about it almost as an interval oriented condition, I think that it's a mainstay. That the contentment that Paul's talking about is not one that waxes and wanes on a daily basis. He is resting in this. And so when I'm referring to that delight and that contentment, I'm talking about it more count it all joy as opposed to happiness, because happiness waxes and wanes.
Right. And because happiness is how you feel, right? Happiness is kind of, okay, I'm happy that whatever happened, that I'm happy about that, right? But
Yep,
being happy, you're right, it it's fleeting to extent that if you're like me and wear your emotions on your sleeve, you know, you can be happy and then next thing you know, you're not, right? But if you can be content, that's a completely different um, feeling, and feeling's not the right word, but a different state of being, so to
yep,
speak. And being content may not mean that you're necessarily happy,
correct.
but you can accept whatever that circumstance is, right? You're
Yep,
not you're content with it. You're like, okay. It's almost like some of these experiences that we talk about with Jesus encounters, right? Where it's like it didn't turn out necessarily the way we wanted it to, or the way we
right.
thought it was going to happen, good or bad, good or bad, right? But you have that contentment in the fact that, oh, okay, I had that conversation. It didn't necessarily go where I went, where I thought it was going to go, or what I anticipated, but I can accept what happened. Or um, I, I, yeah, I can accept what happened. So it's that sense of contentment and not feeling like there's something else that's missing.
Yeah, Sarah, I really like that. The end part, not feeling like something else was missing. That's where I think contentment tends to be. Is I'm sharing my disaster story with you this week from the barkeep that I was interacting with, and I'm unhappy with the turn of events that I have perceived, but I'm content that the Lord put me in position to be able to consider that kind of exchange.
Right. And you've also got that contentment in knowing, hey, I can go back and see, right? And who
Correct.
knows that going back and seeing could lead down a completely different path than than what could have possibly happened or not happened. But it's you got to sometimes take the feeling out, which is
Wow.
hard for
Oh,
us to
oh,
do.
oh, oh, oh.
Okay, I just need to shut up now.
You just said we need to take the feeling out.
Hmm.
Folks, you should be ganging up on Sarah right now.
Kicking me out. Can I be kicked out this week? I haven't been kicked out yet. But sometimes you do take that feeling out. And as a female, it's hard. Okay, my husband is laughing extently up there. But, we do tend to be emotional, right? Okay, people are going to probably kick me out, and that's okay. But sometimes we got to take those feelings out and just be matter of fact about things. Okay, I'm shutting up.
Now,
You're
what she's
right on,
saying
Sarah.
is right. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Diane.
I was just going to say it's so hard because we want to get our feelings hurt, we want to get our backs up, and that's the quickest way to shut down any interaction. And like you said, Preston, going back and apologizing, how many people do that these days? Nobody wants to admit they're wrong, or I just think what you said is brilliant. And comfort, yes, joy, yes, but there's things that send us curveballs all the time where we have to take that time to really talk to God about it and figure it out. But underneath it all, I think the contentment is there. But we really I struggle to keep it up in my reliance on God. It's the only way I can do it. But I can definitely tell when I'm not doing the things I should be doing, like reading the Bible, praying, meditating on who he is. I really get myself in trouble. That's when I lose that sense of
Contentment.
reliance and joy. And luckily, the older I get, the shorter those times are. But yeah, just getting the feelings out and realizing it's not about me. That's the hard thing.
I that last part about getting older and getting better at that. Yeah. Sometimes I think I'm going backwards, but was what you both are just talking about reminds me of something that I have to say regularly in my day job. My tent making job is real estate. As you get into the midst of a transaction and it's not going well, and your client doesn't like what the other one's doing, and it's just ugly, and you have to look at them sometime and say, this is just a business transaction. They don't mean it personally. Maybe they do, but they're caught up in the emotion of the whole thing as well. And we got to remember the goal here is to buy you the house or sell you the house, sell the house or whatever it is. And I think this week I've seen that for myself. I cannot tell you how many aborted Facebook posts I've had this week regarding this this college loan forgiveness thing. It's just been under my skin, and I read what other people post, and then every single time that I get ready to push the post button, I hear the Lord saying, "Is this what you should be concerned about?" And I can take that and I can translate that into 100 different things, because it's like, and again, going back to the idea, this is business. It's like, what business are we supposed to be about? And Diane, that goes to your idea about it's not about me. It's like, doggone it. What Preston was doing with that gal, I mean, it's personal, but it's business. It's the Lord's business. And yet we get all caught up in it. And so I don't want to reduce our Christianity to transactional, but in many ways it is, because we are talking about a very different currency than the world is. So yeah, you guys got me thinking about that, because I too often put my goofy self right in the middle of the process instead of realizing I'm just a tool, and not in the way that we say that. I'm a tool the other way sometimes too. So thank you for that laughter.
I'm going to try to voice this. I want to revisit Preston's Al story. There's 9 years afterwards, there's something that's happened. Maturity. As a freshman in college, there's a sense of wanting to have fun, but also keep friends. The younger we are, the more interested we are in having friends. And the more interested we are in not losing what friends we have. But as we get older, priorities change. We realize that my friendship isn't as important as getting this straight and getting this right. And we mature, and that's why he can go to the barkeep now. He's anticipating it. Go to the barkeep and go, I didn't do that right. I don't really care whether or not we stay friends, but I want to get this right between us so that going forward, there's even the possibility. And his higher purpose is so that he doesn't say this, but so that I can share Christ with you and your new husband. Thoughts?
The makeup of this particular group of folks, that includes a Sarah, the living thought bubble speaker, Diane, who balances the sensitivity of probably the deepest hearted person that you know, but with a profound love and relationship with Jesus, with an academic like Gene, with Bruce, with some of the other folks that are a part of our squad. I say that in a complimentary way because Sarah hit on something, folks, and this is the joy of why I spend the time doing this, why the Lord helps me invest doing this, and not needing to. And I hear Bruce talking about needing to post on Facebook or Twitter, et cetera. And I like that Bruce says the question gets to be, the Lord sort of meets him with, where do you need to invest your time? My time, if I'm going to do that posting and virtual stuff, here's where I invest my time. Because this is where it matters the most. Because us guys are going to be the folks who go and challenge the world, if not on a daily basis, during the course of the week. And not necessarily with a sense of anger or just our own agendas, but preferably with Jesus's agenda. And when Sarah comes up with the wonderful statement and concept of, folks, I don't know how to answer that question. There's a brilliance there. And there's an excitement for me in that because, see, this is the kind of pushback a lot of us have been sitting and we've heard hundreds of sermons over the course of our lives. And we hear pastors and teachers and priests, et cetera, present these words and these verses. And we just blindly either shake our head or we go, yep, I'm good. And we don't meet it with what Sarah just said, which is, I don't know how to answer that question, followed up by, and this is where I like to hover. Let's talk about what we don't want to know. Let's talk about what we don't know how to say, because sometimes in exploring that, it will help us to get more deeply in a relationship with He who loved us first and best, as opposed to just pretending that these words are what we're doing, what we're practicing, what we're experiencing, and we believe them. Because I think we struggle a whole lot of times to truly, if not believe, the words of this big, huge book of ours, but to even understand and then apply. And church is not a place where we have those discussions about not making the grade. Church is a place where we pat each other on the back for being in the club and scoring a perfect bullseye every time we throw the dart. Every time we throw the axe, it hits the center.
Okay,
No, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be that. Just say it. I mean, you know my verse, right? I mean, Hebrews 10:24 tells me that's not what it should be. And I'm preaching on what am I preaching today? Colossians, where it says, I can't remember the verse right now. Sorry, it's still early. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly, so that with all wisdom we're teaching and admonishing one another. I mean, If the word of God is our authority and we actually let it affect our lives, then I, as a pastor, shouldn't have to be the gatekeeper. Sorry.
But now you're asking us to open our lives to everybody else around you.
No, I'm not. I'm not asking you to do that at all. Jesus
No, but
Christ is asking you
but
to
you know,
do
but you know
that.
what I mean. But you know what I mean. We now have to let people in and see our foibles. I love that word. Our foibles, our
I do too.
mistakes. I know it's a great word. Our mistakes and our weaknesses. You know, because I know, Preston, but you're right. Church should be a place for that. That we can do that without any um, condemnation, right? Or any fear of retribution. But sometimes, and I think it was, I don't know who said the club. Was that you, Diane, who talked about the church being a club? I can't remember which one said about the church being a club. Oh, Preston. Okay. That, you know, people like that because now they're in this club, but they now don't want to lose their membership. And if somebody realizes that they have a weakness, it's a challenge.
But you know what? The Lions Club and the Rotary have a higher requirement for their club members than the church does. We are so, I have been so often, and some others on this call have been as well, so often been raked over the coals for asking just a basic level of what we're talking about, that it becomes kind of difficult to keep going back to that same well over and over again. But sorry, I just kind of took us off on a tangent a bit, but since Preston started it talking about the church, I mean, and it's not Sunday morning, it may be Tuesday afternoon or Saturday morning, or hey, let's go get coffee. I need to really talk to you about this. That does take vulnerability, Sarah, big time, and a willingness to, as Preston was willing with Hal, a willingness to lose a friend to tell them the truth, which that's tough.
When the church is a community, and you know, Bruce said you said you're taking us off into the weeds. You're not, folks. We're talking about delight and contentment. We're talking about why we can't answer the question because as a community, as well as individuals, we just never really spend time on the question, what it means, how it defines, how it plays out, and where I'm missing the mark on being delighted and being contentment and being contented and being able to be joyful in the midst of the week that that Sherry and Laverne have had, in the midst of the week of one where we get a diagnosis that in some ways seems to be terminal, to be content and delighted and to be able to count it joy in the week where we lose our employment. It's not that those aren't difficult circumstances. It's not that those aren't challenging situations. It's Paul is at a point here where not only is he settled in the condition of being delighted and being delighted that he can't do it all, he can't cover it all, but he also is at this point of accepting universally the condition that the Lord's put in and on him as a response to how great his relationship is with Jesus. And that seems to us to be absolutely backwards. If we're prospering, if our job's great, if we have material and we have good friends and all that stuff surrounding us, that's where, you know, it and again, things bug me differently as I get older. In phone conversations and in salutations when folks are ending sometimes phone calls, folks will say, have a blessed day. Have a blessed day. And I've come to realize when I'm crazy enough to ask the person the question, what does that mean? That people have very different ideas of what being blessed is. They really and truly do. And actually, for a lot of folks, it's just a nice it's a nice thing to say, as opposed to really having any real meaning. And so the Lord bless you, Jesus bless you. That's what it is that that's all over this guy in these 3-4 short verses. And I'm challenged every time I'm meditating on these to say, how come I can't be there? How do I get there? What's missing so that when I'm feeling like a jackanapes, when I'm feeling like I completely blew it, I go, it's a great day. It's a great day in the neighborhood. What a great time and what a great week I'm having. And one of Bruce's modern themes that he's been sharing with me over the past, several months is this thing that sounds a little bit too churchy, but I think is really the right direction to go in. Because I think Paul did it really well in his Just a Closer Walk with Thee, which is in the midst of all the junk that I think isn't making me happy, I need to ask, Lord, what are you trying to tell me? Lord, what are you trying to teach me through this? As opposed to, this week is terrible. Today is awful. I hate my life. And that, folks, all three of those things change daily if we allow them to, based on kind of what Diane and Sarah shared. Our feelings. If we let our feelings rule the day. And so, folks, this is why when we really think about it the right way, sometimes we don't feel, church word, saved. We don't feel like Jesus cares, right? And that's why, with our heart, mind, soul, and strength, right? That's why we have to sometimes know when we don't feel it. We have to know when we don't feel it. And that's why we have to be able to manage and control our emotions, because sometimes our emotions, if not oftentimes, are wrong, and they need to be tempered and managed. And so when we don't feel like the Lord loves us or cares about us, or he doesn't know my issue, he doesn't know what I'm going through, you've got to know that that's a load of bull. You got to know that. And that's got to override the fact that right now you feel that in every essence of your being. So I just said a bad word. Let me let you comment.
Preston, what you just said about how your feelings escalate, it's gotten to the point almost when that happens to me. It feels like the devil is just pushing the lies. You start out with one emotion, which isn't too bad, but then it's like you start thinking about that and how it affects you. And it's just like, and then you're like, wow, okay, this is not good. This is not a good road to keep traveling down. So, I think as we mature in our faith, we start recognizing it quicker. At least I find that with myself, and it helps me get back on track of, hey, this is not where I need to be. And then that's when the prayer starts, and then that's when it changes.
Two things come to mind. Number one, sometimes I don't feel married. Sometimes I don't feel like I want to be married. But there is a knowledge that I am. And I have to get past the feeling, and it leads to the second thing, because I am married. Second thing is, the heart is deceitful and desperately wicked. Who can know it? And the question is supposed to be rhetorical. I can't even know my own heart. God knows the heart. Man looks on the outward appearance, God looks on the heart. So when it comes down to it, and Sarah used it, get the feelings out of it, we do kind of have to get back to transactionalness in our mindset. There's a transaction that took place 36 years ago that made Kathy and me married. Okay? Even though we may not feel like it, even though we may not want to feel like it, even though there's difficulties and we're doing this, we're still married. And we have to move forward with the understanding that that's the case. The transaction that took place back in 1969, that I and the Yahweh God transacted as a business. He saved me in spite of who I am, who I was going to be, who I was at the time. And I have to go back to that sometimes and go, this transaction took place. And because that has happened, while I have, and I talked about it before, I think it was in Friday night's workshop, Harold Vaughn talking about our sin puts a barrier up between us and him, us and God. And as we confess it and face it, that barrier comes down. Sometimes we put barriers between ourselves and our spouses. They're still our spouses. We have to write that to bring that barrier down. So the heart is deceitful. And let's put that in 21st century language. Our hearts will lie to us. Let's work with facts.
You know, folks, I appreciate Bruce talking about the transactional quality of society. Look, it sounds like it's a bad word. It sounds like it's a business word. But really what that talks about is the gregariousness. It talks about the socialization, the exchanges that people have. And if we were to say that there's a business that we're to be about, well, folks, the Great Commission is the business that we're to be about. And part of our recurrence and our insistence and our revisiting these Jesus encounters is to remind us that that's the transaction that we're supposed to be about, right? That's the one that shows us to be good and faithful servants. But when we take a look at this contentment, this delight, and hearing some of your varied comments, I'm reminded, you know, my wife will ask me this every now and then. Some of you know that I'm less now, but I used to be quite the comic book guy, if not comic book connoisseur, to the point where I've had and I've sold several thousands of books and collections and stuff. And right now I'm at the point where I own absolutely none. Have absolutely none. Although I still like the properties. 663. Okay, good. Yes, whatever.
W-O-W. Wow.
Okay, there you go. Good. Okay, wow. Yeah, so I own none now. And my wife, do not give the difficulty talking guy any credence, because then he'll think he's funnier than he actually is. And I can't.
He just shot ASL all in the foot, man. I mean, all legitimacy is out the window, gone.
He will believe that he is much funnier than he is, and then this will continue. So I just want to put that out there. So my wife will ask me this on occasion. If with the popularity of the Marvel universe and the DC characters, there are books that I've had and sold over the years that are absolutely almost unreachable in current prices. And if I still own them, some of them are worth, if not 5 digits, they're easily 4 digits, and I've got some that may have even approached like bigger than that. And so my wife will say on occasion to me, she'll say, "Are you sorry that you sold that book? Or are you sorry that you sold that collection?" And my answer to her, and maybe this reflects a little bit on what Diane talked about, is that maturity in that growth. Here's my thought. I don't even think about it. I don't even consider it. Even though I have news feeds that tell me what the current value of certain books and properties are, I don't even think about it. And here's my answer to her usually. I am content and I'm pleased with what I sold the book for when I sold it. And so whatever the current status is right now, it is not one that beleaguers me. It's not one that I consider as loss. I don't feel like I'm missing anything by not owning that property to be able to be involved in a transaction with it these days. I am delighted and content that when I had it, I was able to have it. And when I was able to move it, I was able to move it. But it doesn't permeate my thinking in a negative way, if any way at all. Because when I originally signed up for, Gene said, why do you have the news feed at all? Because originally, because I've been a guy with the interweb for several years, I punched the button that said, I want to know about comic book stuff. And coins and some of those other crazy, yes, time out, yes. Oh, I should time it out? Oh, I should sever. Yeah, okay. I think it's fun to be able to take a look at it and to go, Jimmy cracked corn. And it's one of those kind of things that helps me to look at this 2 Corinthians 12, 7 through 10 and say, Lord, maybe you're getting me closer. Because the things of this earth in some ways are growing more strangely dim. Because there was a time when that cataloging and collecting and amassing and then the negotiations of buying and selling and collecting was overwhelmingly pervasive. But not now. You did it again. Okay.
Preston, two things, Preston. Number one, watching you and Gene interact reminds me, he's like, okay, Lassie, where's Timmy? Lassie, where's Timmy? It's like, so I knew you'd appreciate that, but that's come on, girl, tell us where. Sorry. Yeah, I think you hit on something that maybe this conversation has really hit on two things that I think are very valid. Diane was talking a few minutes ago about the spiritual aspect, right, in prayer. You know, we talk about, I think that new mission statement starts with the 2 words, praying people. And so as we pray, I think we will recognize that there's a lot more spiritual warfare going on than we really have understood there to be. And sometimes the defeats, the struggles, they are not just purely human. They are spiritual in nature. And I had that conversation with some guys yesterday while we were at the prayer tent. We were talking about the spiritual battle as they had people honk and wave, but they also had people thumbs down them and give them the finger wave yesterday as well. It's like, so you are in the pitched battle, whether we know it or not. And related to that, what you just said, I think is really key, is that we may not give our progress in contentment the credence that we should give it, that we may actually be far more satisfied in our Christian walk than we are willing to admit. And where you run into that is when you talk to someone who's either a younger believer or you talk to somebody who doesn't believe in Christ, and you see the stuff that gets them derailed in their lives. And you're just, I mean, it's not even a speed bump anymore, man. You're good. And I've come to realize that myself, is that, you know, I'm digging this life a lot more than I used to. So, you know, and that should lead us to praise God, right? Because we realize stuff that used to be a major problem ain't even a thing.
I love it. And that's what goes back to helping to address Sarah's question or Sarah's interjection, which is we don't know. We don't know what would bring us joy. We don't know what would bring us contentment. But folks, this is where your personal testimony matters most. It may not matter to the person you meet on the street, but it matters here. And it matters here because we're invested in each other. Also, because we're blood-related family members. I hope you know that, right? And so what you say and what you experience matters and helps us to recognize that maybe I'm not the only person going through that or experiencing that particular issue. So talking about it, our frailties, our shortcomings, our foibles is a positive thing. And we can do more of it when we're in this group because, folks, in this group, it's not we've made it into the club group only, right? because what it is we gather to then go back out and do the work. This is the place where we need to know that I tried to get up, but I could only toddle this week. Couldn't even walk. This is the place to share. I was trying to toddle, but I couldn't even do that. I could only crawl this week. This is where we do that. And this is where we reinforce kind of that thing that Diane says, by the way, when are we doing this? What's the point? Are we doing this because this is a great Brady Bunch meeting spot? Why are we doing this? Somebody help.
Impact the world for the next.
Huh. Okay. What kind
We
of
got to get
people
the
are
whole
we?
thing. Praying people equipped by Jesus to impact this world for the next.
Huh. Okay. So that's where you need to kind of rest during the course of your week. That may be the yardstick to help you to begin to measure, am I joyful? Am I content? Am I delighted? Do I feel like I'm meeting the grade being a praying person, equipped by Jesus, impacting this world for the next? Am I in the process of doing that? How successful have I been? Have I fallen down on the job? And if I have, be prepared to talk about it, but also be prepared to talk. If you took the doggone mountain last week, be prepared to talk about it.
I think what we're doing today is is important, because as we begin to use this statement more, it begins to move from just do it and you deserve a break today and other sorts of slogans to become a tool that we can pick up throughout the day and go, this is what I'm supposed to be doing right now. I need to do this. And I need to address this next issue with this in mind. I need to drive Broad Street like it with this in mind. I need to, and then it becomes, what was the Avis? We try harder back in the day. We need to make it a tool that is part of our mantra moving forward. And it's not just something you memorize or some cult idea or some, Nazi imposed thing. It's a tool that helps us to be what we're supposed to be when we're supposed to be it.
I'm just borrowing the tools at hand. Thank you, Brother Gene. Do not call me an owl. I'm glad you do. Thank you. This helps to recognize that Diane reminded us that the prayer is an important part of everything we do. That's why we're focusing on it, folks. And that getting to the root of our relationship with Jesus helps us to get through the mire of us not being delighted and content and joyful. So if we can get to a whole lot of people and tell them that before they get to be as mature as some of us in this exchange today, what a benefit the world might get. We can help them in their 20s, in their teens, to recognize that they can start asking this question about their contribution to mankind earlier. What a wonderful benefit we would be to the world. So, thank you, folks, for indulging. I really love the roller coaster ride conversation that we can have together, because look, really, all roads lead to us learning how to apply Scripture to our lives. All roads lead to us really, truly becoming and embracing being praying people, equipped by Jesus to impact this world for the next. That's the idea. All roads lead to that. And so some of the exchanges, maybe you'll revisit them during the week. Some of the difficulties, some of what Sherry said in terms of being ministered to, maybe that will work for you to say, I need to be on the other end of that. I need to be the giver instead of the receiver. Some of those things you'll remember. Bruce putting out a prayer tent this week, and Diane saying, well, maybe you should have a listening invitation too. Well, folks, we should be better listeners than we are ready to tell people our story anyway. And the story we should be telling is Jesus' story instead of our story anyway. So all of those things should help to prep us better to have a sense of joy, contentment, and delight, simply because Jesus' death invites us into his family in a way that we weren't invited after Adam blew it. And folks, that's enough to have joy about. That's enough to be contented about. And I know the here and now feels really real. It really is. But folks, if somebody didn't tell us about the real to come, and we were to experience that, and our feeling would be, nobody told me. And at this point, you don't get a do-over. You don't get a mulligan. So we need to be about the business of telling people that there's a to come now. And I know it's difficult. I know it's challenging. But if we ask the Lord how to do it, I can't do it on my own. Witness me and the barkeep last week. But the Lord will help you to get this right. So that's a little churchification for you there, but I'm beginning to rely on that better as I get to be a more mature man. So
I apologize to you. I did not mean to, and for those of you who are not well versed in ASL, thank you. That's loser. I did not mean to do that. I meant to say I love you, man. Truly, that's what I meant. I missigned. I'm sorry.
Is that like misspoke?
I'm okay being called a loser, brother. Look, and I know that was hilarious anyway, but I recognize the L and loser there. But look, the guy we're talking about was probably considered a loser by lots of folks, right? And so, look, if we're going to get comfortable every now and then with insults and name calling, let's do it among family first, right? Then we can handle it better when people outside call us stuff. Any other comments? Any other thoughts today? You're so off base. I hate you. Any of that stuff today before we depart?
I just really didn't mean to. I'm sorry.
I don't mean an apology. Thank you, though.
Preston.
Yes, sir.
What was your nickname in college, and do you know how it came to be?
Oh, yeah. So I'll since you asked, I will tell you. And I didn't find out about it until later, and I didn't know what it meant at the time because I was a very naive youngster. All right. So you asked, you know, if you can't, if you're going to ask questions like this, Chris, you can't participate in this kind of discussion. This is about you people. This is not about the facilitator. So I'm going to tell you.
All part of the same.
So I'll tell you the nickname, and you may have to ask me at another time where it came from. All right, you ready? Spunkhead. There you go. And in light of that,
I'm intrigued now.
in light of that, as we move on to the next course of our worship, let's pray. I enjoyed you all thoroughly today. So I would hope that this is a great beginning and start to your Sunday, if not your week.